Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivecchio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivecchio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University.
Who's starting? I'll start. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. We're live at the Foreign Policy Review. We've got special guest Ian Kummer again from Moscow. There is a tremendous amount of things to discuss since our last program. Ben gave us a great cheat sheet, as he does every week. It focuses our thoughts. There's Africa to discuss. There's Europe. There's culture issues. There's class issues. I'm not sure where we want to start, so I will. I'm open to suggestions on where we're going to start, guys.
Well, for me, and I think for CARLO, the most important thing, and it happened between our Tuesday show and today's, was the new coup in Africa, in a place called Gabon, which, everybody, including myself, had to educate myself and learn about. Maybe we should start with the broad strokes there. What happened? Who's been ousted? Who's new? And what does that mean? I think CARLO is the one who has some major.
Yeah. Okay. Gabon was ruled by one family for 56 years. The current ruler, who was just ousted, his name is Ali Bongo, and he basically ripped off the country. As Ben and I were discussing before the show, there's footage of his house being not raided, but searched under a search warrant, and they found just literally bags and bags full of cash. It was astonishing.
Don't imagine shopping bags. Imagine fucking big suitcases full of euros, francs, US dollars. Yeah, it's the Ashraf Ghani of Africa.
It was like the Chicago drug police dream. It's their cream dream, because they would all be able to buy new yachts with the money that they skimmed off of this drug bust. It's like that kind of serious money.
Now, in his defense, every family in Gabon has their own suitcases of cash, right?
You're right about that. No, what's interesting about the situation is that now we've got five coups or near coups or whatever that you can focus on, where the core of the perception is the people, and it's really not like I joke. It's not rocket surgery to see what's going on in Guinea, in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso, and now in Gabon. People want to make it sound complicated, and when I got into looking into the situation in Gabon, the commentators from Europe, they want to make it sound as though all of these situations are different. They're not. What they have in common are joyful people on the streets, willing to try anything to get out of this exploitative situation that they've been in with France now for 100 years, 150 years, and the people who have taken over, although the records are short, their periods are short within their countries, have shown that that's the direction they want to take those countries. They want to take them in a direction where it actually benefits Africans. The cliche now is African countries are not poor countries; they're rich countries. It's just that they're exploited. I mean, one example.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
go
wanted
ahead.
to say that on that very point, you can continue in a second, but
Yeah,
just
sure.
to strengthen your point, my favorite video I've seen was on the left hand, like a split screen video. On the left hand, Josip Borrell was saying all of these coups, they're a big coups, they're a big problem for Europe. On the right hand side, it was one country from the other, waving flags and hugging the military coup leaders and absolutely celebrating, dancing in the streets. That was a big problem for Europe. It was a beautiful contrast, but please go on.
And there's a level of desperation there. I mean, they look at the rest of the world and the way it's benefiting. Now, I have to say, by example, China has put this notion in their heads that they could live a better life. There's a
Yeah,
better
that notion.
way. Yeah, but that's neither here nor there. And so you're listening to these European pundits like this ninny, he was a French ambassador to 3 African countries. He's going on and on about this is a different situation. Ali Bongo and Gabon cannot be compared to, Bazoum and in Niger and all of this and this and well, that's all horseshit. What it is it's a homogeneous. It's a refocusing of the resources of these countries going to benefit the people in those countries. One example, Niger provides a third of the uranium that put on the lights in France. Gabon provides another third, as well as they have oil, and they're a member of OPEC already. They a minor member, but they provide another third. That's 2/3 of the electricity produced in France from these 2 African countries.
True.
And where the general population is larger, is higher in Gabon, but relatively speaking, they do not have access to electricity.
Of course, but even worse, the uranium, which is yes, Gabon is rich, it's a tinier country, about 2 million people, so a lot smaller than Niger. But it, like for 50 years, this uranium went into the nuclear industry, so nuclear defense industry, meaning the weapons of France, which I think could be even worse, as opposing to keeping the lights on. And the third thing I just wanted to add is they have manganese mines by a French firm, and that French firm, there's been videos being evacuated. We're leaving. Manganese is for alloy making, for strong steel, the stuff you use in railways and stuff like that. That was all just taken out of the country. What you can build your own infrastructure with. I just wanted to add some context.
I want to interject some complication. So CARLO is making the assertion it's simple, but I want to inject an angle that is interesting for discussion. And again,
the new leader, right?
Well, Ben brought this up. The point is, there's a U.S.-French rivalry. Maybe there's some concern by the U.S. that France isn't being the poodle that they're supposed to be, that they're giving a little bit too much lip service to being independent of Western diktats. And the U.S. is, in response to that, teaching France a lesson. So the new leader in Gabon and the new leader in Niger both were trained at the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia. To
add to that, in the last few days, Macron made a statement with, I don't know, with cameras, maybe a presser or something, but he said that just by a rule, by rights, because we are in Guinea, I think French Guinea, we are actually... Yeah, we are actually, what's the big...
Part of BRICS.
No. Yeah, we should be part of BRICS because we are a nation that's connected to the large bloody rainforest.
Due to our colony.
What's the largest rainforest in the world, for God's sake?
Amazon.
Yeah, we are an Amazonian power. That's what he said. And we, by all rights, should be in BRICS. And I think maybe the US is looking at that saying, oh, yeah, we need to teach them a lesson. Because
I was the one that suggested that the U.S. was involved in some way, and not involved in fact, but the suspicion arises because they're not doing anything about it. They don't seem concerned about it. But
they're not even calling Niger a coup.
But where the brain, where the brain surgery or whatever you want to call it comes in, the simple part of it is, if the U.S. continues to go on the way it is, it's just going to amplify the exploitation 1,000-fold. Now, how you disguise that, I don't know. I don't think you can. I don't think you can get that pitch past the
African
people of these countries. They're going to hit it out of the fucking ballpark. They're going to go, "This is bullshit," and they're going to rise up again very soon. And
Yeah.
I'm
let's not forget
about it.
these 2 point whatever people. 40% of them are unemployed. 34% live in abject UN defined poverty. You know, they have very bad illiteracy and infant mortality rates. It really is a hell for most of those people. So if they think they can just continue under a new U.S. master. So let's talk a bit about this new leader.
So they don't have suitcases of cash? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm telling you. They don't actually have
suitcases. See, I thought it was like Brunei, where everybody has suitcases of cash.
Down in the manganese mines or just sitting around begging for food. But this new leader, General Bryce Oligui Nguema, I'm sorry I butchered that. I'm never going to be very good at that. Apparently, he had a long, distinguished career. He's also a military leader of the Royal Guard, not the Royal Guard, the Presidential Guard, something like that, the first defense line. He had diplomatic missions in Morocco, in wanted to say it too fast, I think, Libya. So he's well trained, very well connected to the US. Apparently, last year it was leaked he had 3 houses, all 3 in Maryland, in the US.
That's right.
So, yes,
near me.
Yeah, near you.
Yes.
So that's the part that shows, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a backstory here, but I'm really not sure. Because a lot of these people, remember the Orban Viktor, he was the chosen man of George Soros. Right, he was the chosen guy, and then he said, "Fuck off, get out of my country." So I think if that can happen in Hungary, it can happen in Africa.
Ian, we've been monopolizing the convo. 12 minutes in. We're sorry. We want to hear your thoughts. I don't know if you have some analysis to share about this recent coup.
May I add that we're thankful we got Ian in at the very last minute from London during his busy schedule. So
Moscow.
From Moscow. Sorry.
I just want to add one thing because Brunei came up and how times changed. The Sultan of Brunei was the money man behind the October surprise and much of Iran-Contra back in the 80s. And now Brunei wants to become a member of BRICS, along with Canada and France. Let's remember France did put a bid in to become a member of BRICS. So that's something to bear in mind. That's all I wanted to drop that little bit.
Apparently very embarrassed not even to be invited, just to be on the sidelines. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't really have any analysis about any of these coups. It's not something I'm an expert in. I just point out there is a lot of hysteria about Russian meddling in Africa, specifically Wagner Group. And then there's the whole deal with Prigozhin. I missed your last broadcast. I don't know what your all's theories were on that, but
it's pretty cut and dry right now, except for some BBC fake videos that the guy is dead. He's been buried. So is Utkin, right, the commander. But we can absolutely talk about that. You're not sure. What's the Russian perspective?
Well,
is it still muscular?
Well, I mean, he's very clearly dead. It's the debate both in Russia and outside of Russia of how it came about, and if it's tied to what was going on with Wagner in Ukraine or Belarus, or if there's something going on with his many trips to Africa that he's been doing lately.
Yes, I've seen a new video where he said it's the second part of August, somewhere in a jeep in Africa.
So it could be, he's very clearly dead. It's a question of who did it. And it's a question of, did anyone do it? And it wasn't just an accident, because planes do crash sometimes. The president of Poland, I can't remember his name, president of Poland was killed in a very high profile. Yes, in a very high profile accident. You've had a lot of celebrities get killed in plane crashes. Also, the more you ride, private jets are not the safest vehicles in the world.
Oh, and just lately, a lot of NATO officials and heads in little private planes, when we kind of know they've been taken out, in eastern Ukraine. But they always, a French guy had this plane crash, and then someone had this plane crash there. There's like one of these for every day of the week now. Very interestingly. But sorry, Ian, What's your latest thinking on the Prigozhin affair?
Well, so it could have been an accident. The question is, if it wasn't an accident, if it was deliberate, the issue with that is there's really no clear way to know who it even was, because if it was the government who wanted to kill him, it could have been them. It's such a spectacular way, plus the collateral damage of killing someone. Of course, there's the possibility they didn't want to just kill him; they wanted to kill everyone close to him. Cut the head off the snake as possible. It could have been someone in Ukraine. It could have been someone in NATO, because there has been a lot of hysteria about him. They are genuinely, I've told you this before. I've always thought Wagner is bigger on paper than it is in real life. But I think a lot of people are genuinely scared of him and thought he was going to be that.
The revolutionary, right?
And so they just decided to kill him. And there's also the possibility, since his insurrection did kill people, it's possible that there were just some military people or families of military people who were just wanted him dead. So it could have been someone, not the Russian government, but in Russia, who just wanted to get rid of him. So there's a long list of suspects. It's hard to say. And how it ties into Africa, of course, is even harder to say, because, we have the news, what they say Wagner and Russia is supposedly doing in Africa. What basis in reality does that have? We just don't know. We just don't, I think, have enough information. So that's my take
where
on
we ended our show. Like, it's just speculation. There's so many angles, and for us to pretend to have any sort of certainty would be misguided. I like Scott's analysis is that it wasn't Putin. I mean, he's pretty certain about that for a variety of reasons, but
so am I,
it's just hard to have any kind of certainty for me.
Look, the initial investigation, if you believe RIA Novosti, high-profile Russian source.
Scott Ritter, he claims it was an accident, and he says something I don't agree with, and that is that the West would not venture to do it because it would be an act of war. And I'm an old man. I mean, Dag Hammarskjöld went down.
If you said that, I'm with you too.
I mean, Zia Hawk went down. Trujillo went down. And it was all the CIA. I'm blanking on the other people. I mean, even domestic people. Paul Wellstone, one of the wives of one of the Nixon administration people. I can't remember which one. She went down in a plane. The Cuban airliner, Posada Carriles, working for the CIA, blew up the passenger
the Olympic fencing
plane from Cuba, killing the entire Cuban tennis team and 73 other people, or 73 people altogether. So the CIA is not a stranger to this, and it has not had global ramifications. So I kind of disagree with that. I think CIA is perfectly capable of doing that.
I didn't see that. From my point of view, Scott Ritter was right initially when he said he's sure it's not Putin or his chain of command. It could have been some disgruntled person, either in Wagner or in the Ministry of Defense. It could have been a disgruntled person, a Ukrainian. It could have been one of the intelligence services. But what I said was Vladimir Putin, he was showing off this beautiful new memorial in Kursk on the 80th anniversary. He's doing a live event there, giving the Hero of Russia medals, the order to the Russian tank crew of the Alyosha, the heroic tank, And the focus of the world was on the historic BRICS summit, which should be the main story everywhere. Why would he do such an expensive, huge distraction that the West could latch onto? I refuse at this point, without evidence, to even consider such a scenario. Everything else is open. Ian?
I would say Scott, I wouldn't say it's necessary. Of course, it's all speculation. We can't know, but I think Scott Ritter does actually have a point where he says I wouldn't say it's impossible that NATO did something, but based on what he said, it would be a huge risk to take, because not only is it a direct attack on Russian people, it's a direct attack on Russian people who are on the ultra-nationalist faction of Russian politics. Because Putin's crew is very much keeping the dog on a leash. and not
Yes.
escalating it. Because the thing is so apparently if it was an operation and went off without a hitch, the risk is if it failed and they caught a bunch of people who were clearly working for the CIA, if they'd been caught and there were actual people proven to be on, Biden's orders to take out, Russia's greatest national hero, I think there would actually be huge risks. They would be obligated to retaliate.
Well,
Maybe that's what they were hoping for.
I haven't followed up on this, but the main interest in the investigation was a former pilot who had access to the plane and then moved to Kamchatka and disappeared. That was the latest I had from RIA Novosti, like earlier in this week, but I haven't followed up. And that could be connected to any of these bad players,
I think it's also true that Russia does have a history of when there's news that would demand an escalation, like the sinking of the Kursk, which is widely believed to have involved a NATO submarine. They have a tendency to say, we don't want this escalation, so we're just going to. They do the same thing in Ukraine. They're always downplaying. You talk to people on the ground at Donetsk or Luhansk. They say, yeah, you listen to the radio traffic. It's like there's very little Ukrainian. It's all Polish and English. But you talk to the Russian government, they say, oh, no, there's only 2,000 mercenaries and no uniformed NATO personnel. That's what. So I think there's a tendency to, when they can sweep it under the rug, they do because they want to keep control of the situation, because if you get the public outraged about something that obvious that originated from NATO, then you're obligated to do some kind of military response. I think they're trying to avoid that. So Scott, I wouldn't say he's necessarily right, Carlo, but I would say he has a point that the risk of CIA guys being caught with their fingers in the cookie jar in the middle of trying to blow up a plane, that would be such a huge risk. Unless, of course, they want just right now a direct hot war with Russia, which is also possible.
It's in their interest, and we have a very similar situation we can get to, which was the attack on the Pskov air base, very close to St. Petersburg, way up in the north. But I want to go back a little bit to Africa and BRICS, because that's where everything comes together, because there's two pieces of, by the way, before that, two headlines. The West really wants, some in the West, the UK wants Prigozhin to be dead. Two headlines I've read. One was in the Financial Times saying it throws Russia's Africa plans into disarray or something, the death of Prigozhin. And the other one was a bit worse. It said all the Wagner soldiers will now be starving. I guess he cooked for them and fed them.
Yes, he fed them himself. Yes,
but that was something hilarious. that popped up today, that the Wagner soldiers will starve. So that was an interesting point. But to bring it back, Mali, the UN was renewing embargoes, basically sanctions on Mali, and Russia just vetoed it. And that to me is like fulfilling the promise that they made at BRICS, that sanctions should just not be used, starving people to do goals within a country should not be used, and also the reforming of the UN to have the global south or the developing countries to have a better voice was one of them. The second one, just this week, Algeria in the north, also in Africa, partnered with China to build 6,000 kilometers of railway. And I just think they're doing the shit. They're not doing the signaling. They're not doing these little attacks on Moscow or Peskov or camera photo opportunities like Ukraine, the West loves to do, or speeches. They're doing the actual agreements, the stuff that matters in the world. So that's where I thought I'd take that, but maybe that's kind of a dead end unless someone.
Well, we have some images we were going to show of the newly deposed dictator of Gabon, who was, a friendly ally of France. So his wife was French. They imported snow so they could have a white Christmas in Africa while the rest of his people starved. Which is
that's actual snow. Okay. That's real.
No, it's fake snow, but they imported fake snow so they could have a white Christmas in a huge mansion. Just to list something off, that's Sylvia Bongo, a French national, a citizen of France, her white wife in Africa. And what this guy had in 2009, when these properties were listed, were about 70 bank accounts, 39 apartments, 2 Ferraris, 6 Mercedes-Benz, 3 Porsches, and a Bugatti, all in France. So that's
So it's classic neocolonialism where there's a comprador class that benefits by facilitating the extraction of wealth from the people to Europe and to the West. And so he's the middleman, and they reward him for his service. But the people eventually are going to get sick of it, and so we're seeing that, like Carlos said at the beginning of the show, we're seeing that take place over and over again throughout all these West African countries. Chad might be next. There's other countries that are, likely going to have the same thing happen. And again, a lot of credit for all of that is Russia's SMO. They're standing up and saying, "Hey, we've had enough. It's done. We're, the game's going to change." So we're seeing these huge paradigm shifts, geopolitical paradigm shifts, and it's great. It's good. So we can support that. So even if the U.S. is partly facilitating it to screw France, it's still good for the people. So, and who knows if that's even true? Just because he has 3 houses in Maryland, just because he was trained at School of the Americas, doesn't mean he's not genuinely doing something because it's the best interest of his people and just working for the CIA. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
people can turn on their trainers at any moment. It's happened before. It can happen again. Also,
the golem
two other
always
countries.
turns on his master. The golem always turns on his master. That's true.
Well, they could be rental units too, or something. I mean, they could be like down the street from me. You can still rent an apartment.
Nothing fancy, maybe nothing fancy.
Under $1,000. I mean, it's
Maybe.
not $800.
You should
It's
go
a
visit.
shithole,
We should
but
research.
It's cheap.
What was also intriguing is someone captured documents on X, formerly Twitter. They're published in original French language, and that was Gabon. And so after the Gabon coup, within 24 hours, Cameroon and Rwanda, I don't know their affiliations or alliances, but they also did this huge shakeup, this purge of the military.
Rwanda is the biggest. Rwanda is the Israel of Africa.
US.
Exactly.
US.
Yeah.
Okay, they did a big purge of the military leadership, either to prevent something like the Gabon coup or to bring it about. I'm not in that case to prevent it, I guess. But they and Cameroon had a big shakeup. A lot of senior military personnel being let go.
Well, I think they're concerned. They see what's going on because Kagame is a huge puppet. Like he's the what's this guy's name in Gabon?
Which one? The bongos or the new guy?
Yeah. No.
Bongo.
So Kagame is the bongo of Rwanda. I mean, that's what it is. So he doesn't want the RPF or the military to overthrow him and do what's in the best interest of the Rwandan people. So he's protecting himself. I think that's what that means. So I read that, on your summary.
Yeah, I'd be worried too. I mean, if I were Tinubu, I'd also be worried.
Yeah. Christopher Black, though, is one of the actually the defense lawyer, I think, in the case before the ICC involving a Gabon national, which
Rwandan national.
Can anybody remember? It's been a while since, but Christopher's take on the whole thing was the usual. Everything was trumped up out of nowhere. There was no evidence, and of course, his client got off, but he was the ICC held him in jail for 3 years, but then he was eventually released.
Yeah.
But his electoral career was destroyed.
Do you know what they call? I don't remember if this was Christopher Black or read it somewhere else. What they call the ICC in Africa?
What?
It's the International Caucasian Court.
Ah!
Yeah, the white people arrest black people.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's fine.
So we covered. I wanted to get Ian's thoughts on that attack on the airfield that was really close to Estonia. There's a lot of speculation of who could have done it because it couldn't have come from Ukraine, mainland. So I was curious to hear Ian's take. But go ahead, Carlo.
I just wanted to say I remember what it was. It's in defense of Scott Ritter, and the way Scott put it was the accident notion he had was that these people, they were in these small private jets, and they loaded munitions onto those jets, and they didn't load them properly, and the improper loading of the munitions may have caused an explosion.
Yeah,
and that's been his basic explanation. But go ahead. Let's hear it, Ian.
Maybe we could move on to the Pskov airfield, like
Yes.
after a break, and just start with
Okay.
Ian's thoughts, because
All
it's so far up in the north. Take it away.
So we'll head to break.
Had to break.
Undoubtedly, Africa is the best tourism destination on Earth. The continent is blessed with the most conducive atmosphere. To feel and enjoy these blessings, join the most productive one-week tour of the continent organized by Daylight Africa every September 2nd to September 9th to see beyond the fallacies about Africa on the mainstream media. Contact us at daylightafrica@gmail.com or call 718-822-5555. Daylight Africa. Revolutionizing tourism industries in Africa.
Okay, we're back. We were just discussing. We were about to discuss this recent attack. It was a drone attack on a military airfield way up in northern Russia on the border with Estonia. The issue was, how could Ukraine have accomplished that attack, since they had to go 700 kilometers, I believe, over Russia to be able to hit that airfield, which is way, way far away from Ukraine. So there's some speculation it could have come from Estonia, which is a NATO country, which would have meant a NATO attack on a Russian airfield in Russia, or it could have come from the sea north, which is, I think, one of the plausible explanations. But I just stole Ian's thunder, and I'm sorry, Ian. Do you want?
No.
Do you have any thoughts on that one?
I haven't seen any details on the type of drone that we used, but the reality is you have about 6 or 7 million Ukrainian nationals living within Russia itself. And this is a high profile and successful drone attack, but there are drone attacks on a near daily basis now, and most of them they kind of, people don't like to talk about, but the reality is, for most of these FPS drones that they typically use, it's had to have been launched within Russia itself. Well, maybe this one was conceivably launched from Estonia. That would just be an incredibly stupid thing to do if they did do that, but it's most likely within the territory of Russia itself. There's the people who are willing to do it. Even someone who has no citizenship in Ukraine and has no relation to Ukraine could conceivably be convinced to do it. It's
liberals.
Well, not so much. Maybe liberals. Yes, it could be liberals. It could also be ultra right-wing people who sympathize more with Azov and Bandera. Even in my little suburb I live here, which is north of Moscow, there's there's a Bandera tag on a wall.
What you see on the map is where it was. So what you have here in the west is Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and Lithuania, and all the way south, that's Belarus. All the way here is Ukraine. Like, seriously, an attack at this point, it looked very, very unrealistic. I thought I'd show that.
So you kind of rule out, that Estonia would have been involved, right, Ian?
I wouldn't rule out anything. I would rule out it was launched from the territory of Ukraine, because that's too long a distance as a very long-range attack. There's not many drones that could even do that.
By the way, I know he's this, divisive personality, but I watched Solovyov live, a little clip. You probably know him. He's the big mad dog, worse than Medvedev. And he said, if it turns out it was Estonia, Lithuania, or Latvia, wipe them off the face of the earth. But, that's the type of guy he is.
Soloviev has a couple of big houses in Italy that's Europe that they took away from him, and he's not happy about it.
He would be pissed, wouldn't he? But he was wearing a CCCP, and that's not him, like a red Soviet Union sweater during this show, which for me was kind of iconic.
There's also Soloviev is not an ethnic Russian, which is another thing to keep in mind here.
I didn't know that either.
He's a practicing Jew, actually, which is interesting. It's something to keep in mind about his personality, too, because he does say very divisive rhetoric, which doesn't necessarily represent the views of average Russians either. It's very much when you have one of these big TV pundits in the USA say something, it does not necessarily represent what the average Anglo-Saxon American on the street necessarily thinks too. So there's this thing.
Oh, you don't say.
That's
Yes.
a great segue. That's a great segue because I did want to really touch on this broader issue. And so,
Big US media personality.
Yeah, but I wanted to touch on how it's kind of divisive. So, you have people that are maybe saying correct things about Ukraine, with big platforms, and they're a thorn in the side of the establishment that wants to control the narrative and push just one dominant narrative. So you've got Tucker Carlson, you've got Trump, and you've got other people that are kind of anti the whole Ukraine thing. But yet, these people, from an ideological perspective, have definite problems in other areas and have definite ideological shortcomings. And so the question is, do we just cancel them because they're not pure, or do we allow them? Do we support them when they say things that are true and make sense? And are we happy that they exist and they have these big platforms and they're using their platforms not just to say nonsense like China's the problem, but when they say good things like, maybe NATO ought to be dissolved. So if we can cut to the Tucker Carlson clip. So Tucker Carlson was like, maybe this is in Hungary.
I think it was in Budapest.
Clip, and he's saying some really important things, and to a really wide audience, like 100 million views already of this clip. Listen to this.
The world is resetting completely. The post-war order is collapsing. NATO is going to collapse, obviously. You can't have the driver of NATO, which is the United States, sabotage Germany's main source of cheap energy in Nord Stream. The Biden administration blew up Nord Stream. And the Germans are so self-hating, they won't say anything about it. They sort of put their head down like, no, I don't want to talk about that. Okay. But I do want to talk about it because it's important. First of all, it was the biggest act of industrial sabotage in history. Second, it was the largest man-made CO2 emission in history, which if you're a global warming cultist is like the devil himself come to earth. And the Biden administration did that. But third and most important, it was an attack on Germany, which is the most powerful country in Europe. Western Europe is America's last main ally. And we just attacked our most important ally. NATO cannot stand long term. At some point, the Germans are going to wake up and be like, wait a second, we had chemical plants 2 years ago. Now we don't. You just wrecked our economy. I don't think it can continue after that. I really don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see how it does.
So I have some thoughts on that. On that.
You take it.
So first off, so to answer your earlier question, Billy, about how you perceive someone who you don't necessarily agree with on other issues, but he's saying obviously the right thing about this. Well, I'd have a two-part answer to that. One, Tucker's the guy I would define as the guy you are friends with, but even if you don't agree on anything, right? He's that guy at the dinner table, right? And someone brings up China and you're like, oh no. We have to listen to Tucker go on for 10 minutes about China, right? He's that guy. But
he is.
You're still friends with him. He's not coming from a mean place. He's not a mean person. But also I would consider this as like a canary in the mine, right? When the canary starts acting funny. So that's what because Tucker is a very, by American standards, a center-right guy, right? He's a very mainstream. His father, I believe, if I remember correctly, was, he wasn't from Tucker isn't a nobody. Like his father, I think, was a big media personality. He was in Voice of America and all that, right? So he's a very mainstream.
In Europe, we'd call him a default conservative. That's what we call him. Yeah.
Yes, a default conservative, very mainstream, very Reagan type brand. Yeah. And if even he is looking around and saying, this is crazy, we've gone off you need to really be concerned. And if he's considered, because Tucker Carlson is also not by any stretch of the imagination an extremist in American politics, like not at all. Like 5 or 10 years ago, no one would be calling him an extremist. It'd just be like, oh, he's your very typical Fox News conservative guy.
Thank God he's been liberated from Fox News. One of the best things to happen.
But now he's like, oh, he's this extremist, far right, literally worse than Hitler type of guy. You're like, well, how is the Overton window of American politics shifted? Now, I wouldn't even say it's shifted left. It's just shifted into crazy, you know, whatever. Actually, you know, and so it's worrying if he's the most reasonable person in the room and people are saying he's crazy, we need to be worried. And his points in the video, I don't know how you feel about them. I think they're all good points. And about, you know, climate change, global warming, you know, it's not an issue I get worked up about. You know, I'm not even saying it's not an issue to be worried about. I think it's a completely legitimate point to say that our oligarchs, our ruling class, do not themselves, even the people who preach the loudest in our government, who preach the loudest about climate change, do not actually believe it. Because if you sincerely believe, okay, the world is going to end in 5 years, it will be like in a Mel Gibson movie where we're throwing spears at each other in the, you know, in
Water world.
in rafts. Yes,
Water world,
yes.
or Mad Max. Yeah.
If that's what you believe, well, why would you be fighting? Why would it matter if you own this Russian village in eastern Ukraine? For God's sake, you would not be. You would just. None of those wars would matter.
Actual priorities belie the bullshit of their
so they don't.
What you said was uncontroversial. I can see Carlos shaking his head, but that was uncontroversial.
No, it was very controversial. The last part actually doesn't pan out.
I think we should have a whole show dedicated to a climate change.
I had my record death threat day on Breitbart when I pointed out that the U.S. military believes that climate change is important strategically. And so that blew up on Breitbart, and many people said they knew where I lived and I was a dead man for saying that.
I mean, but that doesn't contradict
let me just finish. All I did was go to the Military Times, which is a publication of the U.S. military, and forward to them 12 or 14 articles where the U.S. military is very, very, very concerned about climate change. The North Pole, when the ice melts, the access, the various kind of
that
access,
Russia will have, yes.
Yeah, that Moscow will have in other countries. The articles went on and on, all by people, either think tanks hired by the military or people within the military. And, you know, and the Breitbart people had to shut up. They hadn't thought through like that. So if the U.S. military is heavily concerned, I mean heavily concerned about climate change, it's undeniable that these people are concerned about climate change.
Point made, but the military being concerned that there is a new trade route opening for Russia is not the same as us fighting with pikes and spears in the water, you know?
Well, that's just a fantasy.
So
that's Avatar
relative.
Clown time.
And to say that they're heavily concerned is a subjective statement. So they're not heavily enough concerned to demilitarize, which is the U.S. military is the biggest polluter in the world.
Right. That's
so
the irony.
Not. Like I mean, on a certain level, it's an issue that they're monitoring, but they're not really fucking concerned about it. That's bullshit. Because if they were, they'd fucking dissolve their fucking army and they'd save the planet that's going to die.
Well, they're never going to do that, Billy Bob.
But strategically, they are.
Come on, guys.
It's not Mother Teresa. They're not motherfucking Teresa. They're the fucking military, the U.S. military. They're going to continue to do what they do. And what they see is the outcome of this is to blow everybody else out of the water. They're the sole people. Then they'll be concerned about global climate change on the level that you and Mother Teresa.
I want to
interject. Let me interject. Okay, so let me tell you about. So there's a couple things here. One, the Military Times is, and it's actually very important. Military Times is a tabloid. It's not owned by the military. It's not controlled by the military. If you look at Military Times articles, and you'll see this, they deliberately pull the most sensational things that they know, especially military. Like they know what pisses military people off, and so they will. It's like any other tabloid. They like to say something that's provocative, right? Yeah. Think about that. So you're not saying you're wrong, but also about the military itself. It's a money pit. So if I come to you, so I'll come to let's say I am a military contractor. I go to my buddy who's a general. And of course we're buddies. I was a general. He was a general. I go to him like, hey, I've got this idea for an economically friendly tank. And then he's like, oh, sure. And then he writes me a check for $50 million. I might give them a tank later. I might not. But I have 50 million because ultimately, when it comes to things like environmental impact, it's not a thing for militaries to be concerned of. You don't build a tank. You don't worry. Well, what are the carbon emissions on this tank?
Look around Okinawa. Look at around the sickness all around the bases and the pollution.
Well, what I'm saying is for any military, you don't worry about because there's a finite number of things you can make a weapon good for. Environmentally friendly, because ultimately, if you want to be environmentally friendly, what you do is you build your weapon so you win the war as fast as possible. And then so ultimately. It's a money. They're just wasting. They're stealing money. They're wasting it.
I wanted to make this quick point that the military is concerned by the moneyed class is concerned by which is economics, which is why they're so concerned about the Northern Sea route that Russia is opening. Yes.
For two things, it's not just the Military Times and their reporting that's talking. They're not making this. They're both linked. They're talking about the military's concern about global climate change strategically. There are many, many, many other sources. The other thing is, it's true. You can put down the Military Times as much as you want, but it's true. They are doing this. It doesn't take too much to confirm it. The documentation is there. Go to WikiLeaks and look it up. That's where it's cited.
I would still like a dedicated episode where we actually thrash this out.
Maybe for a dedicated episode, because I think it's all valid points. I won't say, Carl, I won't say it's an invalid point. I think it's too far off from the Ukraine issue. Maybe
But there's degrees. There's degrees of concern.
And I didn't want to shut you.
I didn't want to get involved in this discussion at all, to tell you the truth.
And I didn't want to shut you down, but we have 1 hour, and I'd like to get back a bit to the Tucker thing, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the Tucker thing, I would say overall, and I think his other video, I don't think it was this video, it was a different segment he did where he said that it's very likely that, and I think it's related to this, what he's saying, it's that he thinks it's very likely there is going to be a hot war between Russia and the USA. And the reason he gave was that reigniting COVID is probably not going to be enough. They need wartime powers. I think there were, it's because that would be just a wet dream if they can say there's a hot war with Russia. They're not even concerned about the war itself. It's just that Gulf of Tonkin, to implement military war powers, suspend elections.
I thought it was going to be
overt censorship, not just the algorithm and the shadow banning, but actual overt. And they're already doing the overt, but they can. It's all a matter of degree. You can ramp up the censorship.
Interestingly, the House
elections, even though the elections are fake anyway.
The house slaves in continental Europe, Poland and Ireland being the first actually implemented that. Like this disinformation or spreading disinformation is a jailable offense now. Very interesting, all coming out this week. But he dropped a number of truth bombs. But I wanted to say that Tucker, when it comes, I'm not sure about the hot war with Russia. I thought it was going to mustachioed people like John Bolton, who still think everything that Russia says is a bluff, which is very dangerous. I thought he'd be the one to take us there. But anyway, he came to Budapest, this guy. Before this little 1 minute skit, I wish we had more clips, but we don't. He interviewed Orban. Like, it's 120 million views on Twitter right now, his latest episode. He interviewed Vučić. I don't think it's aired yet. That's the Prime Minister of Serbia, right? People you can't get. And there's an important story on RT by Margarita Simonyan herself, the boss at RT, that he's seeking to have an interview with Vladimir Putin. And I think
that would be amazing.
The world needs that. The world would watch that like the internet would go down, guys. I would absolutely, even the most skeptical Americans would tune in.
It would be such a threat to the Western narrative as well.
I think Tucker should avoid planes.
Fair point.
I agree. That's rising to a level that you need to watch your back. Like if he does an interview with Putin that's watched by hundreds of millions of people, I mean, that's dangerous. That's like JFK level dangerous.
George Galloway, someone I immensely respect, he said, because of a law that Liz Truss created, he can't interview Vladimir Putin by law, even if he wanted to. And Tucker is in the position to conduct that the world would watch from beginning to end.
What about there'd be too much pressure on Elon, and he wouldn't allow it. They would shut it down. I think it would be too good. They'd have to shut it down. That's my I'll go out on a limb and make a prognostication that won't happen. It's too dangerous. They would shut it down. But I would love to see it. Carlo, we wanna get you involved. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So no, here's what I wanted to say. Here's what I want to say, because look, Carlo, we might have total agreement, but here's what I do. I look at the most extreme claims of climate change. The world's going to end in 5 years if we don't all, turn off our electricity. And I say that that's probably not true. It's probably not that bad. You probably look at those people that say there's no problem. There's nothing to see here. It's all bullshit. And you say, no, there is a problem.
No,
and
don't put words in my mouth. That's not what I say. You don't want to know what I say.
Oh,
I spent 35 years doing this, and I'm not going to talk about it because I've already been pilloried. Okay? I've been pilloried by the scientific community. I'm out. I gave up writing about that 15 years ago. I couldn't take it any longer.
I'm sad to hear that, because I think
I'm going to. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. If you talk about me being a nihilist, this will send you over the edge.
Carlo, I was making an effort to find common ground. I was explaining
that there is no common ground. I'm on this one. I'm totally out.
Okay. I don't know what your thoughts even are, but if you don't want to share it, that's totally fine.
Totally fine, but don't put words in my mouth, because I do want to hear what you have to say on a dedicated 2-hour show. I really think that should happen. Okay.
Well, if there's a nuclear war, we will be in Waterworld anyway, throwing spears at each other.
In that case, who cares?
Let me just say this. I began a process of writing about, this is in poetry form, a poem about physics, basically quantum theory, modernist poetics, and European transcendental philosophy. And I began studying quantum physics, and I had access to a friend of mine who was the girlfriend of a guy who ran the cyclotron at the University of Maryland, which at the time was pretty good. And I began to read heavily into quantum, and heavily into physics, and heavily into the history of mathematics and science. I came to the conclusion that systems of quantum, and not only me, Hegel on page 100 of the standard paperback edition of the Phenomenology of the Mind says the same thing. He talks about the limitations of quantification and of mathematics. And this is Kant does that, and Schopenhauer does that. We discussed Schopenhauer very happily with Christopher Black on our show. They all say it. The limitations of quantifying nature is what's causing the destitution of nature, or whatever word you want to give it, climate change, whatever. That's what I supposed early on when I began these studies. So the problem is there's only one epistemology that's dominant in the world today. It's the one that's put us on this screen, and that epistemology meaning how we can know the world. And this is the only way now that's left that has any influence on how we can know the world. And that way of knowing the world is leading to an inevitable climate change. Inevitable planetary destruction, whether or not you have good intentions. If you're using that paradigm, it's over. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that. I don't want to argue with anybody. I've argued with dozens of people. I published 2 articles in Science is Culture. I got my asshole reamed by people that knew a whole lot more about it, supposedly, than I did. I'm done with it. I'm done.
Hegel and Schopenhauer are also not today's news, but today's news is that China reduced pollution levels by 42% in the last 20 years and increased life expectancy by 2.2 years. Where's the celebration? Where's Greta Thunberg? Where was she when the Nord Stream got blew up? Where was she when the Kharkov Dam got blew up? Ecological catastrophes. Come on. But I don't want to leave everybody on such a sour note and another yelling match. So maybe some concluding thoughts. We have about 6 minutes. Ian, Billy Bob, whoever wants to go on.
I would say to give my closing thought here, I would say as far as the drone attack, if it did in fact originate from Estonia or one of the other Baltic midget states, that's my favorite term for them. The Chihuahuas of the Baltic, if it did originate from one of them, of course, I'm sure there will It's a very serious escalation. If it was just another drone attack that originated within Russia itself by Ukrainian saboteurs, then not so much. So it might be just another drone attack. It might not go anywhere.
So there's an investigation underway, and they're going to find out at some point.
Yes.
Oh, of course there is.
And they'll respond accordingly.
Yeah. Either the FSB has work to do, or they have some new targets, basically.
But as of now, it's still unknown exactly. It's just speculation at this point.
Yeah.
My concluding thought. I mean, I would like to enter into a little bit into the debate within the self-described left, and just look at the two different perspectives on dealing with people that lack ideological purity. So do we cancel and denigrate what's his name, the Tucker Carlson, because he's not ideologically correct on everything? Or can we, are we happy that he has a platform and he's saying some things that need to be said, even if sometimes he says things that aren't true? So I definitely fall on the side of saying, hey, I don't want to cancel people. I don't want to cancel, Tucker because he's not ideologically pure, even if he's a racist, even if he hates China and wants a war against China. I'm still happy that he's able to speak truth, on his platform about Russia and Ukraine issues.
I'm with you.
And I think it's misguided to just want to, to cancel people because of their lack of ideological purity. And I think the cancel culture is a problem, and I don't think it belongs on the left. But okay, I'll leave it there.
I will follow up, and Carlo will have the very last word. That if anything has been shown by Tucker Carlson since he left Fox News, is he can learn. He has been self-deprecating over that he was in Iraq War, basically a cheerleader. So he can learn. He can actually come to a proper sense on the issues. On cancellations, 0 cancellations. I wouldn't cancel Ben Norton, even though I don't think I would enjoy his company in real life. It's not the kind of person I would like. For example, Jackson Hinkle, I know CARLO Parcelli doesn't like him. He's young. He's obviously, he has his ideas, some of them good, some of them bad. Because he's gone the route of full Christianity, including the Russian Orthodox Christianity, I wouldn't pillory him. His interview with Orban Viktor, he's going in this direction. I don't know if you guys know, I've had some fight with some Russian heavily Orthodox people, okay? People like... They say Lenin is evil, Stalin is evil, and all the Kolchaks, the Vlasovs, the white generals, the traitors, they were the real heroes, and everything Bolshevik needs to die. And on the other hand, there's a real synergy between orthodoxy and communism being created in the masses of Russia. But yeah, Orban Viktor said they hate us because we're Christian. And all you have to do is look at history. They hated us when we were an atheist communist country. And they hate us now that they're Christians because they hate us because we don't follow orders. Exactly the same was true in the Soviet Union, the atheist phase under Lenin, then the Orthodox phase under Stalin. They hated them both, and they hate Russia today. It's got nothing to do. You can bring in these points. Tucker can bring it in. Orban can bring it in. Even my leader can bring it in. And if he's wrong, he's wrong. No cancellation. No, this person shouldn't have a voice. That's what I would say. Listen to everybody and maybe trust that people can learn. Carlo, sorry to leave you there.
Yes.
Well,
let's hear it.
I mean, I'll begin with a quote from Ezra Pound, Canto 16. He writes about the Kerensky government. They can do everything but act. Go to the Bolsheviki. I mean, that's in Canto 16. He's right. Those people, the Bolsheviki could act. The Kerensky government was in paralysis. The Duma was in paralysis. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I hate cancel culture too. I hate DeSantis's cancel culture when he cancels the culture of African Americans. Won't allow the word gay to be spoken. That sort of cancel culture. I despise that, and I despise it from a position of open-heartedness, not a position of closed-heartedness. I feel like I'm sophisticated enough to see through the Steve Bannons of the world and the relationship that he has with Tucker Carlson and people like that, the Douglas McGregor. What you can say, which you have to understand what's driving people to say these things, like Tucker Carlson about is it just celebrity? Is it a money thing? Is there a cabal involved? Is it a way of finally getting after people of color and destroying them in America? Now, if it's a toss up between Ukraine and Ukraine being resolved and the Tucker Carlson's rhetoric prevailing, I'm all for that. I would like to see a resolution to the problem in Ukraine. What I don't want to see is them gaining power through using this rhetoric about Ukraine to gain power and then to kill my neighbors.
Yeah.
To kill my the guy next door who's a nurse from Nigeria and the guy at the end of my block who's from Ethiopia. I don't want to see that. I really don't want to see that.
I'm with Carlo on the surprisingly positive end note that he can see through it, so can everybody else. Trust that people are smarter than these idiots think. So, yeah, if people can see through it, so can you. Thanks for being with us. If you enjoyed
how
what you
boring would this program be if we all agreed on everything? So
Right.
thank you, Carlo, for your heartfelt comments, and thanks everybody for watching. Ian, thanks for coming on. We'll see you again soon.
Yes, it's great talk on everything, really.
Thank you for it very much.
Thank you, really.
Yeah.
And bye to the viewers. We'll see you next week, either Tuesday on Blowback or Thursday on Foreign Policy Review.
Okay.
Well, now it's supposed
It still
to be
says live. So.